Is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
Yes, it is. And sitting with me is the other original of the three of us members, Dan Warren, independent insurance agent. And we were telling stories about our youth when we came up. And we didn't quite finish the story, but needless to say, we can't tell it on the radio.
You know, Joe, most of my
No,
stories,
definitely not.
I cannot tell on the radio.
Most of our, well, you know, if there's a kid alive that hasn't done a dumb thing, I've never met him. Those of us that were lucky not to get caught, one, probably by the old man, two, was the most important thing. If Dad would have caught me doing anything, that was a fate worse than death. So, you know, that was a great motivator, Dan. You and I had
It was a great motivator, and you know, and my dad said this. He goes, "Listen, don't get caught, because I don't have any money to get you out of jail."
right one.
So he wasn't going to. He told me there's going to be no lawyer. There's going to be no nothing. So it's like, you know what? I'd much rather not do that and not get in trouble. But most of my woes came from associating with, as my dad would call them, my hooligan friends.
Yeah.
And you know, so yeah, he was right on the money.
My mother used to say, "Your brother's running with the wrong crowd." I said, "Ma, he is the wrong crowd."
The wrong
Yeah. You know, we had a guy, a star athlete at our Catholic high school in L.A., who was tossed from school for having a beer.
A beer.
This is in 1962.
How old was he?
Oh, he would have been, what, 16 maybe?
Okay.
Yeah. But one beer.
And
It shows you how different times are.
Well,
you know,
and what happened to him?
he got tossed from school. He had to go to public school. Yeah.
Do you remember this? When I went to high school, we had a smoking lounge for seniors.
yes, we had an area at our high school called the Wall.
You got to be kidding.
No. And this is a Jesuit high school. It had a smoking lounge for seniors.
At Palm Beach High, there's a wall right there in front, and that was the designated smoking area.
Really? Are you? Come on.
I'm not-
Now,
I am not
you didn't
serious.
have that because you're not as old.
No.
See, and I'm telling you, in Detroit, U of D High School, Jesuit High School, when you became a senior, they had a smoking lounge. If you made it through the first 3 years of high school, they figure, you know, you deserve to be able to smoke.
Now we had a separate
Hey,
senior parking
We didn't
lot.
have a
No, I'm talking in school.
Wow.
in the buildings.
Yeah.
Oh, well, see now the Wall at Palm Beach High, they didn't care what grade you were in. You could go there and smoke.
Wow.
Don't you remember the song "Smoking in the Boys' Room"?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
remember the song. Yeah,
It was the rites of passage. If you didn't smoke cigarettes when you were in middle school, or
Well, it
something-
wasn't the cigarettes that they were worried about.
I know, yeah. Right. 340-1590, 340-1590. Back in 2004, Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, Greg Fasula, attorney, and Joe Martek, financial advisor, started doing these radio shows, and it was a very simple premise. What we had was different areas of expertise, 30 and 40, and even more years than that. And the concept was let people call in and we can help. And we've been blessed, to put it mildly. We've helped thousands of people over the years. We've educated people. Each one,
And we've had fun.
we've had a wonderful time because we also get into politics on occasion, and politicians make it real easy to be entertained.
Especially this time of year.
Oh, man. So it's even, I don't know, did you stay up and watch anything?
No. Well, you know, here was my theory was this. If I stayed up and watched, I would have doubled the viewership. So I felt that it wasn't, it would give them a false sense of hope.
Did you watch, Greg?
We did when we got, Carol and I were here doing election coverage. Barry Grant was down in Stewart for WSTU.
See, last night, 10 o'clock, you were doing it?
No, we got home 9. We were actually done pretty early. We were at home by 9:15.
Now,
Well, I
do you
thought- I
remember
thought it-
all the people who got the nod by the public as who's moving on? Do you remember who they are?
Oh yeah, locally. I mean, you bet.
Yeah, locally. I don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was very interesting is
No, I'm not talking about the local coverage. I was looking for the Democratic convention last
no.
night.
I could care less. I want to know about local people.
Okay.
that's 10 o'clock. But you know,
10 o'clock,
what-
way past my
What
bedtime.
amazed me, was Sheriff Snyder's son,
Right?
who had a huge radio blitz on both of our stations. Actually, I think he also did Spanish. I think all three, and boy, it worked. It worked, and he that race wasn't even close.
Well,
But, Fort Pierce Mayor, that's going to be a runoff. We have a couple school board races up here in St. Lucie County that will go to a runoff in November.
nobody's running against mascara, right?
Oh, yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, yeah, they
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
Have you
Somebody runs
seen,
against.
have you seen mascaras? Have you gone and see the candidate? Mascara's got $140,000 or $50,000 in his war chest. No. Ain't going to be close. Not going to be close.
Sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes I think that the party puts out a sacrificial lamb
Oh, of course.
just so they have opposition.
Well, yeah.
Are you talking
yeah.
Joe Biden?
You are a mind reader, Joseph.
Who?
Right, Uncle Joe.
Oh, him.
His,
Yeah.
well, his poor wife was defending him this morning that he's not senile, not out to lunch. She almost said occasionally.
Occasionally.
I was just wondering if anybody saw the AOC. Because
No.
It was
I
only
missed
60
her.
seconds, so you missed it real quick.
Yeah, but what happens is she didn't mention Biden one time.
No,
Well, she didn't have enough time.
She endorsed Bernie.
Yeah.
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 And didn't Bernie say that Biden's going along with his programs?
Which he's not.
Well, it's just interesting. I'm just
Oh,
But
yeah.
listen, not to defend any politician, because I would never do that. But don't you think that most politicians will promise you whatever you want to hear till after they get elected, and then they're going to do whatever they want?
What's the oxymoron? Honest politician? I mean, come on. Of course.
So if Biden were to say, let's say I was Biden, all right, and you were Bernie, I would say, Bernie, of course we're going to do whatever it is you want,
Right.
because I believe in what you believe. And then when I'm happily elected, I'll say, Bernie who? What?
No, you say Bernie's sweetheart, and then you just take the knife out
Yes,
slowly.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I believe very little of what I hear,
Oh, boy.
or
Or read.
read.
I always look when I read something, who wrote it. And, in defense of some of these, quote, kids that write the stuff for the local papers, they are young. Yeah. Do they stretch things on occasion? Can you imagine that?
Well, they put their own twist on it.
Yeah.
It's just like we used to always.
That's different, guys.
Yeah.
That, believe me.
We used to
that was a
joke-
fireable offense in Los Angeles.
Oh, of course it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
There
was. Used to
no, I mean, when Carol went to NBC, there was an entire chapter on, fireable offenses and, any opinion.
But that doesn't hold true anymore.
Oh no! It's
know,
it's off the charts.
That's when
now.
we used to probably have more respect and felt that what they were telling us was more closer to being true.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I remember our television station in Tucson had John Chancellor do a seminar for the newsroom, and it was really kind of cool. And they talked about the ethics of journalism and the whole thing.
Do they still teach that?
Seems like it's all out
They
the
probably
window
still
now.
teach it, but
They teach it,
but it's
yeah.
not really applicable anymore.
Yeah, it's a and I remember it's just there's some very, very sad things that we're living through today, and it is the lack of ethics and it is the lack of honesty. I remember two attorneys that I have and hold high esteem in Martin County that are no longer practicing, and one has died, who quit practicing some years ago. And I said, "Why'd you quit practicing?" He said, "Joe, it used to be the day when I was talking to an opposing attorney, we would shake each other's hands, and I could believe what he said." They didn't lie to each other. He said those days are gone. He said, I just can't practice that way anymore because this veil or this cloud.
But you still have lawyers, and Joe, I firmly believe this. Lawyers know who the ethical lawyers are.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
lawyers know
they do.
who
Yeah,
the
yeah.
scoundrels are.
Of
They
course.
know. They
Of
know.
course.
I can give you my little story. So I was sitting on a Little League board, and I had a friend of mine who was on the board, who was a lawyer, and he goes, Dan, I have to resign from the board. And I go, why? He goes, well, I'm working a deal between the Little League and the school board on some property, and I represent the school board. And I don't want anybody to think I would do what I'm doing wrong.
That's
so I
very
have,
nice.
So I have.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I knew
Ethics.
instantly this man was ethical, and
Yeah.
I've used him for things he can do for me for real estate ever since. So don't kid yourself. There are great lawyers.
I agree
out
with you. I agree. And as I said, I held these two men in very high esteem because I knew them personally. I knew they were very ethical. Their reputation was such. But then here comes, so it's a sign of the times, I think. And now we're watching the political stuff, and where one station shows a lot of stuff like's going on in Portland and who's getting mugged and who's getting hurt and kicked and stuff, and then other stations don't even address it at all. And it's back to the politics. And what is not political anymore, Greg? I mean, is there anything?
Yeah, it's. I remember going back. You talk about trust. Back in the '70s, before I got into sports, and I was a Capitol correspondent in Sacramento, and every Thursday, Governor Jerry Brown used to come out the Capitol steps on the east side, and there were 6 of us, reporters, and he'd bring out 6-packs. And we'd because there's no business done on Fridays, so and we'd be taking notes. This is what's going to happen next week.
Nice.
But he trusted us
Uh-huh.
that no one would break the embargo, and no one did in the 2.5 years that I was traveling up there to do
Wow,
the job.
wow.
It was amazing. But that could never happen because you could never get to a governor
Yeah.
that close
Yeah,
anymore.
right, right.
And B, the whole journalism type thing is
Everybody wants to scoop the other guy.
exactly
Yep.
at all costs.
With lawyers, Joe, my son will tell me many times, Dad, we know who the settlers are. And what
Yeah.
he means by that is these are the lawyers that spend a fortune sometimes on advertising.
Oh,
They want to write 2 or 3 letters and settle.
Of course.
And if
the
they don't
settlers. Oh my God.
and if they don't
Well, that's
settle,
true, though.
then they give it to
Yeah.
a lawyer who is an arbitrator who actually goes and does the court work.
Yeah.
All right, but he got paid. He'll get paid because the client went to the settler first because he was attracted to what he saw, and then the guy goes, no, go ahead and let somebody else do it.
There was I was given a card at the business summit a couple of years ago in Palm Beach law firm, and so I talked to the marketing guy and I said, hey, here we are. We've got talk radio stations and stuff. And he said, we are a referral agency,
That's a big one.
and your Treasure Coast people couldn't afford us. And it's like, oh,
Wow.
okay.
Well,
Nothing-
that
nothing like being
941
blunt,
pain, and you see a lot of these things.
Oh,
where
yeah,
you have
yeah.
lawyers who sort of invest in that advertising.
Sure.
And they get put in rotation. And if somebody calls to get some information on that, whoever turn it is on that rotation, he gets that account.
Yeah.
And I understand that.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of people who don't understand that still hire them anyway, not realizing what's going to happen.
Well, the average consumer, Dan, when you're old, one of the few perks of getting old is experience. What was your old favorite saying that your dad told you?
Wisdom is just an accumulation of mistakes.
So
But
what-
then my dad would say to me, but in your case, Dan, these problems are usually your mistakes.
Well, my dad said it, and I'm sure yours did too, Greg. Listen, learn from my mistakes, which, of course,
Yes.
young guys
Yeah.
don't. We have to make our own. But what happens is when you do get old and you've had all this experience, you, in theory, make less mistakes. I still cut my finger, though.
I saw that.
Yeah. But all it amounts to is with this things that we take for granted with the legal and other professions, that because we've lived long enough to have experienced many things that the younger person has not. It's just every time you come along and a person, they buy their first house. Well, this is a brand new experience. Just because you bought 20 and 30 houses over the years, or 50, doesn't mean that you weren't there at one time
But
with that
if you
first
can
house.
pass a little wisdom, I seem to be talking about my son a little bit today, but there is a group where he lives in Columbia, South Carolina, of the oldest practicing lawyers. They all get together.
Nice.
Because it's a profession you can do as long as you're mentally able. Well, they get together and they bring in young lawyers every week.
Oh, like a mentor program.
And they
Cool.
And they talk
It is.
about stuff, and they get to know each other, and they pass on the bits of wisdom and integrity things. And it was kind of funny. My son was getting some people continually getting people off on technicalities. So the judge approached him about teaching a class for the police department, how they can properly arrest people.
Well,
And so he calls me. He goes, "Should I do that?" I go, "Baby," I said, "absolutely." I said, those policemen know everything you're going to tell them. The only reason you get them off is because they don't think an attorney is going to know those things and can't get their client off. So go ahead and teach them, and you'll be still getting the same people off because they're not going to do the things you tell them to do anyway.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, I was watching either CNBC or Fox when they were interviewing one of the Chicago cops or one of the congressmen up there, and the number of cops that are early retiring all over.
Can you blame some of them?
Oh, man. You kidding me? Especially in the big cities, meaning Chicago, Portland, Seattle.
And look at all the wisdom, since we're on that topic, they're going to lose by having so many senior police officers decide that it's time to go.
I traveled when I was running the ESPN LA office, Portland, Seattle, at least once a week.
Okay.
And,
Beautiful cities.
the Rose City is so gorgeous. And I heard last night they broke into the Multnomah building, and I used to walk right by that all the time. A beautiful place. And, you just think, my God, what in the world is going on?
What is going on?
Well, I think that what you have here is leadership has relinquished their responsibility, their covenant, shall we say, to the public.
Yes, they have.
To protect what they're supposed to protect, and have turned it loose and said, hey, we don't want to know.
You know that word ethics, there you go. I mean, when you take an oath of office and you're becoming a mayor or congressman, whatever, you have an oath, and you promise to do certain things, no different than attorneys do, anybody else. You make a commitment. Well, what is going on that these people are falling apart, not protecting? I'm having an awfully hard time understanding the difference. Listen, right and wrong, there might be a little gray sometimes, but most of the times it's not. It's either right or it's wrong.
Absolutely.
And when you start destroying property, I don't care what your reason is, it's wrong.
So let me ask you this. Let's suppose you were a property owner there. Would you defend your property?
Of course.
And if you did, would you expect to be arrested, or would you expect to be told you did the right thing, Joseph?
Well, listen, under our system today, I'd expect to get arrested for defending my property or my family.
Isn't that
It's kind of
terrible.
sick.
That's
It's
terrible.
sick. It's like that one couple in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And they, what the media, and Greg, they had to constantly say mansion.
Right,
They had to paint these people as, oh, you're one of them, with the people, you've got too much money because you own a, quote, mansion.
He had a high-end gun.
Now, let me just tell you something. That house was $1 million.
Of course it was.
I sold my house on the Intercoastal for $1.5 million in 2004 because I couldn't afford to live in a house that expensive. But I thought nobody ever called my house a mansion.
Well, you talk about owners defending their property. I'll never forget during the Rodney King riots.
Yeah.
And we had just hired somebody from the LAPD at Fox, and he was laughing. He just said that his old commanders were told by the Korean shop owners, and they had just taken over Western Boulevard all the way, and it used to be Watts. And the Korean owners told the LAPD, stay out of this area.
Yeah, we'll take care of
We
it.
will notify the county when they can bring the coroner in to pick up the bodies.
Of course.
And these guys were on top of their roofs, and they were picking off everybody who was looting.
Well, now here's the thing. If you have a mayor or police chief who says to those Koreans today, you do that, you're going to
You're
prison.
going to jail. Yeah.
Right, and that's the difference in society. You know, I was in New Orleans before Katrina hit, about 6 months before, and it looked like a third world country once you get off the main boulevard. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to this boy I know who's going to Tulane.
Yeah, sure. I
Right.
know the
Sure.
know
He
the
goes,
campus well.
I go, what are all these signs you see for this police department? He goes, well, that's the private police. He goes, the private police put out their sign to let you know if you break into that house, you will be caught. If you don't have that sign, they know that the regular police is patrolling your house, and you probably won't get caught. I said, you're paying taxes, and you got to
No, that's irrelevant
and you
in
got
New
to double
Orleans.
down and get your own private security.
Does it
And
sound
you-
like the mob?
Well, I'm telling you, if
How
you
they
don't-
kept things under control?
if you don't watch it, you're going to have to see people having to get private security
Yeah,
in these
yeah,
cities where the people in charge, say the police department, turn a blind eye to the robbing and the looting and all the bad stuff.
You know, I read a series of books starting with American Assassin, and it's about this young guy who gets hired by the government, but they can't have him. And he's a professional killer, eliminating bad guys. But nobody knows about it because that's against the rules.
It's against the rules. They should have just called our Jewish allies because they
Yeah,
don't have a problem
yeah,
with
yeah.
assassination.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Haganah. Anyway,
Well, and you know, you talk about it. You're from the Midwest. I mean, you look at what's happened to Chicago.
oh,
I mean, there are areas of Chicago the police refuse to go.
yeah. Well,
I mean,
30 to 50 people a week get shot. You know, nothing serious. you
it's
know.
horrible.
So then I'm going to throw this out. Suppose you were living there, Joe.
Yeah, yeah.
You were a captive of your parents' decision to live
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
They could have been low end or involved with illegal activities, and they chose to stay in an area that they were comfortable. But here's the wonderful news: you don't have to stay
No.
there. You can get out, you can move, you can get away from there. And so when I look at that, I think, is this not a ghost town? Because if I lived there and I knew that my kids and my family were at risk every time they went out, I would have
Find
a
some
plan
way
to get out
find some way to get
and
out.
go away.
Well, and I'm trying to find a reason why people stay. But you see the movie Gran Torino with Clint
oh
Eastwood?
gosh, yeah.
Now,
yeah.
that's my hometown, Hamtramck, Michigan, which is a factory town. And you remember now, this is my family. The old Polacks, I mean, they mowed the lawn with a hand mower, and they trimmed the bushes with a pair of scissors.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh
I
yeah.
And then they
yeah.
washed the street out into the middle and cleaned. I mean, literally, that was theirs. Now, if you remember that movie, the people next door moved in, and they were Vietnamese or something, and they weren't used to taking care of things the way the old Polacks do. And if you remember,
He took offense.
Clint Eastwood, boy, he used every word in the world, even though he ended up befriending them and they befriended him. It's a sign of the time. So these gangs, and that was another part of the movie, where they were now this Korean or Vietnamese gang.
Oh yeah.
And gangs have been a part of life forever. But back when we were kids, the gangs were like clubs rather than going out and attacking other gangs. I mean, it wasn't all fights all the time and shooting and killing and stuff. But just sign of the times, guys. Very sad, very sad. Anyway, what I'm hoping is that our boy that's running this country now gets reelected and he makes things a little tighter like he's promising to do with the legal system and the police.
Well, look at it this
Start
way,
supporting
Joe.
the police more.
We had a big war in this country that killed more Americans than any other war, and that was the Civil War, because it killed nothing but Americans.
Right.
On both sides,
Right.
they were Americans, all right? And that war said the federal government is the big dog. The state is not the big dog anymore.
Right, right.
In this
And
case,
they agreed to that.
what we have now is we have specific states, and within them, little fiefdoms
Yeah.
of people who say, we're going to pick and choose which law we're going to support, and which law we're not. And so don't be surprised if the really big dog Fed says, hey, I've been watching and I've had enough of this and I'm going to fix it.
Just fix it.
And don't take offense to that when that happens.
Well, Trump has threatened, said hey, 1 hour I can cure this problem. And boy, let's try it. You bring in the troops, bam. I mean, all you need to do is just beat up or shoot a couple of people.
Well, no one wants to see a repeat of Kent State in another form or fashion, calling it something else.
Right.
So we don't want that. But how many innocents, and especially these children that they keep profiling,
big time.
how many innocents have to die before the government says, I've had enough?
340-1590, 340-1590. And then after Dan and I got together in 2004, we got Greg Fasula, attorney, into the group. The whole concept, 3 different areas of expertise. And then about, 8 or 9 or whatever, 10 years ago, when the Great Recession hit, Ms. Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, hardest working realtor known to man, got involved with us because there were so many questions about real estate, which brought us to Mike Paulus, mortgage broker, who's only been in the mortgage business about 30 years. And he continued to educate and re-educate people on the realities of the mortgage business and what you can and cannot do. And what I love about Mike, or people like Mike, is that you call him on the phone and in 15 minutes he'll let you know what you can or cannot do.
Well, I always appreciate Mike letting people know that we're able to help structure some of these deals from the insurance side.
Right.
But I'm going to toot his horn because, I have not had a mortgage in a long time. But interest rates are so low. It piqued my curiosity. I'm telling you the truth. It's like this. It's not free money, but it's pretty doggone
pretty close.
I got 30 years, and I've never gotten a 30-year note before.
Right.
I got 30 years, 2.8.
Oh, hard to, listen.
So for the next 30 years, I've tied up that money at 2.8. Now, I also do, here's the first thing I always do. Now, not everybody does this. When you first get your mortgage, they give you like 60 to 90 days to make your first payment.
Yeah.
I always make my first payment right then on 30 days, 60 days, and it's 100% to principal.
Yeah, immediately.
Because I don't have any payment that's due.
Interesting.
And if you start that snowball off faster, and I don't pay once a month, I pay every 2 weeks. They draft it out. I'll take that 30-year note already, and I'll have it down to 23 years.
Well, here comes the other side of the coin. People say, Joe, should I get a mortgage or not? And I say, well, there's 2 parts that work, your brain and your heart or your stomach. The stomach very often overrides the brain because owning your house without a mortgage is the way you were raised and taught, and that makes perfect sense. On the other hand, there's not many deductions you can have anymore when it comes to taxes, but you can get up to $10,000 a year deduction on your primary residence.
Well, don't forget, Joe, that for some people, filing this new short form the way they have it, they don't have enough
they don't have
deductions anyway to write that off. So you have to think about what you're doing.
And the second side of the coin is, if you can make 5% on your money, reasonably safe, and you can borrow money for 2 or 3, is there not an equation here that's pretty
There's
simple?
a little spread there that's coming your way.
That's my point.
Like what?
Well, listen, if you make 5 and spend 3, you get to keep 2. This is heavy-duty math, Greg. I know this is hard stuff.
I flunked math.
I know.
I flunked it when it went from a number to an X and Y.
Yeah, when they did the X's and Y's and the equations, we all had to take every math course in the world.
Yes, we had to pass.
And I memorized. I never learned a thing. I memerized the stuff in order to pass.
You memorized the
Pi
formula.
equals
You remember the formula.
Yeah. But I will tell you this. My brothers, either you're a math person or you're not. I'm a not. And that's just never been my strength.
Well, my daughter-in-law, Allie, is, when you take those LSATs and stuff?
Yeah.
She got perfect in math.
Wow.
And she's a math teacher.
Well, there you go.
Her brain is
works
mathematically oriented.
Wow.
340-1590, 340-1590. I got a couple of subjects, Dan. Are we done with politics yet?
We're done until you want to bring it back up, Joseph.
Okay, because we have a hard time not talking about it because it's very timely.
Well, there's so much out there to talk about.
Well, what happens is I have a client every week or so that comes up with something that I haven't talked about on the radio. Or if I have, I don't remember talking about it. One of the
That was
perks of
last
getting.
week.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Dan. Anyway, annuities we talk
You
about.
remember what you said when you got in here?
What's
today?
your name again,
What's
Greg?
that? Oh, yeah.
Well, is he still Greg? Yeah. The station owner's husband. Anyway,
Let me check.
annuities are contracts with insurance company, and why do we have such a thing? Well, we can put money into it. It's like a savings account. It can be invested in fixed instruments. It can be invested in the market. My compliance people say you're supposed to know the claims paying ability of the insurance company. But what happens is the reasons for the annuity company.
Now, hold on. I'm going to jump in. Let's suppose I'm listening.
You're
And
listening.
And you say, you got to know the claims paying ability.
Of the insurance company.
How would I know how to do that? Are they
Okay.
rated, or what would I look for?
Way to go, Dan. What happens is AM
Look
Best
on
is probably
Yelp.
the biggest one. They rate the
That's
insurance
help.
companies. And what Dan and I have talked about internally is we know how the state works, how the state protects the consumer, et cetera, but we don't want to deal with companies that might have a potential of a problem. So we just don't even want to entertain those companies. I like dealing with A-plus superior rated companies. If they're A-plus superior rated companies, they're household names, they're old line companies, they run a tight ship. I know my client is not going to have potentially a problem, even
So
though.
if you're a potential buyer of your product,
Right?
I would say, hey, go online,
Yeah.
look and see what they're rated, and then you'll feel comfortable. If you say, hey, I don't have a computer and I don't know how to do that, guess what? Joe can get you that rating, so you'll feel comfortable.
Yeah.
How many of those companies are around?
What?
A-plus rated?
Hundreds.
Yeah, there's more than you
Really?
think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
more than you think.
That's good. Hey, that's
what,
good.
what happens is most of us don't pay much attention. Like when you get our car insurance, there's X number of companies that we know because they're on the radio and on the tube. Well, that doesn't mean necessarily that they're highly rated. That means they have a budget to spend money on the radio and on the tube. However, there's many companies that don't advertise that way. They deal with independent insurance agents, and they have what they try to be a superior product that might be a hair better than the ones that spend a lot of money because they're not spending a lot of money.
And when they get those ratings, they guard them. They do not want to lose them. Just not to get off the subject too much, Joe, but you remember when Andrew hit,
Oh.
and all the insurance companies said, hey, we're going to non-renew so many thousands and thousands of homeowner policies.
Right.
Why did they do that? Well, they did it because the rating companies came to them and said, based on what we're looking at, you're overexposed in Florida,
Yeah.
and if you don't make some changes, we are going to
Downgrade you.
downgrade your rating. And they said, oh, please don't do that. We'll fix that. And that's what they did.
Non-renewed or
right.
double,
So
triple.
they
their
left.
They reduced their
Well,
exposure.
Yeah. Let's say east. Remember east of US 1?
Was the fallout zone. No one wanted you to insure them there.
That
Like
was-
the hurricane stops at US
Well,
1.
it's like our little tower is, what,
Oh, yeah.
100 yards east of US 1.
Right.
By Village Green.
Yeah.
And we had to go to Lloyd's of London.
Of course.
to get it
Nobody
insured.
wanted to touch it.
Nobody.
No. Yeah.
Well, you see, what happened is when Andrew put 10 or 12 companies out of business, insurance companies, but then the state had to pay every claim because they were admitted companies, meaning as soon as it's a company that's approved to do business in the state, we as consumers pick up the protection of the state, and the state sure doesn't like that. So now.
And don't forget, Joe, that if you are an admitted carrier, you pay a fee to the state on every policy.
Absolutely.
So they try to fund it where it is solvent. They want that pool to be solvent. But at the same time, they don't want to have so many companies go under that if they all, were to go under, they would be insolvent. So they watch your financial statement very closely in the state of Florida to make sure you're good to do business here.
Back to
your
annuity country. So tax deferred. Tax deferred means I can put money into it, and until I take money out, there's no taxes. When I take money out, it's ordinary income, no other form of tax. When I die, they're not subject to probate because we have named beneficiaries. And last but not least, if I get sued, it can't be taken away from me. These things are protected,
From creditors.
period. Not from the infernal revenue, but from creditors.
Uncle Sugar wants his money.
Uncle doesn't care about all the rules that everybody else has to deal with.
Yes.
Now, what happens is there's a word called annuitization. Have you heard that word, Greg?
I think you have mentioned it.
Wait a minute. Do you have any clue what it means?
I have no clue in the world.
Well, that's what I figured. So this client of mine says, hey, Joe, I got this contract with an insurance company, and I can annuitize it. And I said, okay. I said, do you know what they're talking about? Well, they gave me 4 or 5 different options. One is I can get a check every month for the rest of my life. I said, okay, here's the question you're supposed to say. After I get one check, if I die, does anybody else get any money?
Right. Or do they get to keep the rest?
Well, the answer is no. Oh, wait a minute. I don't like that. Okay, well then fine. What you need to do is have an annuitization that says I'm going to get a check every month for the rest of my life, but no less than 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, pick a number.
For what I paid in?
And every time you do that, you get a lower amount every month because you're guaranteeing that income for a period of time. Some of them say we'll give you a check every month for the rest of your life. And if you die while you're collecting that money, if there's any balance left in the account, that will go to your beneficiary. So usually that money would last, give or take, 10 years, and then if you still stay alive, you keep getting paid. But if you die, when you die, it's over. Yeah, there's no if.
If I was married, could I protect my wife or spouse?
Second thing, I can get a check every month for the rest of my life, and if I die, the same check can go to my wife. Well, that's called a joint and survivor. So what happens is the check, each time you add this wrinkle, the amount of the money that you get per month usually goes down a little bit because the insurance company is not taking as much risk. You're taking the risk.
Now, would your wife be able to take over that policy?
What I just said. If you have a joint annuitization where we're going to pay you a check for the rest of your life or your wife for the rest of her life, one of you dies first. The other one keeps getting the same check for the rest of their life.
Oh, I know. I'll be gone.
Well, here comes the next question.
But if she dies first, Joe, here's my question. So I take out this annuity, and you say to me, and I'm going to make my example easy. Dan, if you take it out and it ends when you die,
right,
you get $1,000.
Right.
But if you want some money to go to Nancy when you die, you only get $850.
Exactly.
All right. Now, here's
makes sense.
So let's suppose Nancy dies first, and I haven't started taking any money out. I can't go back and change it and say, I now want $1,000.
No.
So once you make the decision, you make the decision.
Once it's in concrete, it is there. It's done. So you got to be very careful. This word annuitization means basically, hey, I put something in contract. I'm now going to get a pension based on those details. And you cannot change it. Once you get that first check, it's all over but the shouting. So you got to be a bit careful. So I had a client come to see me and say, hey, here it is. I'm getting this money. I've got these annuitization options. And I said, okay, are you concerned about your children? Well, yeah, but I have this joint or I have a remainder. I said, okay, so you've got $300,000. You're going to get $1,000 a month. Let's just take it. So that's $12,000 a year. 10 years goes by. That's $120,000. 20 years goes by. The money's gone. Now you die. The kids don't get a nickel. Because if you are guaranteed for the rest of your life, but they have a remainder of the money, you have to be a bit concerned about that. What is your goal? When I look at people, the most important thing is, what is your goal?
Absolutely.
Well, here comes well, Joe, I want to have an income of $2,000 a month and take as little risk as humanly possible. And I said, well, let's work backwards now. How can we accomplish that without setting yourself in concrete so you have the word liquidity? Liquidity means, gee whiz, once I set this thing up and I'm going to get a check for the rest of my life, like Dan said, you're in concrete. But if I don't do that, can I get $2,000 a month out of my investments without taking undue risk? Well, insurance companies do the same thing. They would have a guaranteed income for the rest of your life that can't ever go down but can go up. But you have liquidity, meaning I can cash it in and run if things go right. As an example, if you'd have bought into the Standard & Poor's 500 on March the 20th this year, you would have made 50% on your money so far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going crazy.
Well, the key is this. Now, if you were in this concrete, it doesn't make any difference what the market does. Doesn't make any difference what anything does. You're going to get that check every month.
It's sort of like buying a pension.
You are, when you annuitize, you're buying a pension, and it's in concrete, can't be changed.
Let me ask you this, because, you know, when you start talking about this stuff, I always think about the what-ifs, because that's what I hear from my people.
Absolutely.
So let's suppose I got a husband and a wife, and they're both about the same age, but they haven't retired yet.
Mm-hmm.
So not taking any money out.
Right.
And they have chosen to take the plan where they get a reduced benefit, but the wife continues to get it if the husband dies first.
Right.
But in this case, the husband keeps living, the wife dies, and they haven't started to take the money yet.
Right.
And we know he can't go back and change it now.
Well, now, see, normally, Dan, they haven't really made a decision because maybe they were going to, but until they receive that first check and annuitize, it hasn't been done.
So if he remarried a new wife,
Right.
he could probably put her on.
You could do that.
The 27-year-old girl.
Well, that's what I was thinking because she's going to live forever.
Well, the key is this. Let's say we
Wait a
had-
minute. What's going to happen to Nancy in all this?
Well, Nancy,
Come on, Dan.
Nancy's going to dump. She's going to dump your rear end real quick. You know that. Anyway, the key thing that happens is once you sign a document and start accepting payment, that's now in concrete. Now you don't set up this account to start getting a payment starting 10 years from now. Now it's tax deferred. You have liquidity for the next 10 years.
And it grows in value.
So what will happen 10 years from now, you say, okay, here's my decision now. I can start doing this, quote,
So
pension.
you could buy these before you're ready to retire and start getting growth to that.
There you go.
investment.
There you go. So there comes the next part of that equation, which is if you're into a variable annuity, you are in the market. Like I had this fellow that called when we were, remember, we were sitting outside. He was talking, he listened. Well, the Standard & Poor's 500 has averaged 10% a year for 90 years. That's 500 of America's biggest companies. So if you're invested in the S&P 500, the odds are pretty good, in spite of politics, that it's going to average close to this 10% a year. Last
Some
year,
years it'll be higher, some years it'll be a little
last
lower.
year was up 30. This year it's break even as of today.
So if you look at those 2 years, it's 15% on average.
Exactly. So when you start adding 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 years, you'll have the 30s up, the downs 10, all of its averages out. Well, people start to get scared when they're, say, in their 60s and 70s and start to say, well, hey, that's all fine and good, but what if I don't live 10 more years? I want to make sure my family's protected, or I want to make sure I have income. Well, the insurance companies do that. They'll come up and they'll say, hey, we're going to guarantee you income for the rest of your life based on what you put in, but then what we'll do is every 3 months, some companies, if the market goes up, you go up. So we'll reset it at the high water mark. High water
Locks
mark.
in there?
Yeah, and they lock it in for the rest of your life. So let's just take an example. Let's say that I put this $100,000 in, and I've got $5,000 a year guaranteed, but 1 3 months period goes to $150. Well, your new high water mark is now $7,500 a year, no longer $5,000, and it can't go down from there, except under one circumstance. If you decide to cash the whole thing in, it's based on the market value.
Mm-hmm.
So here comes another one. This client of mine, this is luck. He put in like $158,000 March 20th. Took out $24,000, put it in his pocket. Today he's worth $210,000.
Wow.
Well, guess what happened? Got in right at the very
Sure.
bottom,
And it exploded.
Now
Yeah.
it's come. Do you think he doesn't even know how lucky he is? Because
Because that doesn't very often happen.
no, the old rule: buy low, sell high.
Yeah, most of us buy high and sell low.
Well, Warren Buffett said it, and he's not the only one. When everybody is happy, it's time to get out. When everybody is distressed, it's time to get in. Because the old rule is you buy low and sell high. Well, most people, when everybody's happy, they're all talking about it, and they say, oh, you got to do this, you got to do this, and, the neighbors know everything.
My neighbor does.
I always do. So the concept is, what the insurance company does is say, hey, no matter what, we'll protect you against outside influences so that you know that no matter what. On the other hand, if things do go up and you all of a sudden make way too much money, take it and run. It's your money. You have liquidity. You have security on one side, guaranteeing income for life, guaranteeing your family a death benefit. However, if all of a sudden it's gone from 100 to 300 over a period of time, take the 300, take a trip around the world, and the hell with the
Because
kids.
there's probably a little
Taxed
probably,
at what, though?
Pardon me?
Taxed at what?
Ordinary income.
Yeah.
Always ordinary income. Now, one of the things that happens is most people don't take it all at one time. And I've had many times people would say, hey, Joe, I need to get $100,000 out of that. And I said, based on your tax structure, you're probably going to have 25% hit. take $12,000 in December, take $12,000 in January.
That's right.
Split it over 2 tax years.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
the whole thing, you got to, oftentimes you don't think about these things, but guys like Dan and I, it's what we do for a living. We think about it all the time. How do we make your life better and mitigate as much as we can the risk and or taxes?
What's the old saying? It's not what you make, it's what you keep.
It's what you keep. Isn't there a commercial on TV like that?
I don't know. There should be.
There probably is.
I want my 40% discount.
But
That's
hey,
right.
we're going to give you a 100% discount because you
40%
haven't
off.
given
You're
us
Mr.
anything.
40% off.
340-1590, 340-1590. The owner just came in and she's trying to relieve the lackey that we have here. She's whispering in his, ooh, I'm telling you, you guys are pretty intimate. This is exciting. Actually, we now are getting the good producer.
Oh, you had the rookie on the board.
The rookie on the board.
Rookie, look out.
We have the one with no memory whatsoever. Now we got the one that remembers everything.
Everything. That's like my wife.
I was just going to say it's a particular disease to women. What do they say? I can forgive, but I'll never forget.
I know that one.
You know that one. 340-1590, 340-1590. So what I'm trying to say is when you hear that word annuitization, this is where I was going, just be a little bit cautious about making the commitment. You may not know the questions. One thing I often do with people is in helping them, I'll sit with you on the phone on a conference call, and we will call up the company, and I will have them explain to you from the horse's mouth what I'm explaining so you know exactly what your options are.
So do you think that sometimes agents don't perhaps inform the customer quite as strongly as they should?
What do you mean sometimes?
Sometimes.
I think
I have to be very careful.
regularly, unfortunately. But you know, they call it errors and omissions. I didn't lie to you, but I didn't tell you the whole story. Why?
But you're not Paul Harvey.
Can you believe it could be self-serving? Can you imagine that? Remember the one when we had Greg Fasula in here and we had this attorney, client died, and
Yes.
they didn't
He said, come back later.
come back and we'll put
when
the
he's
house in
dead.
the trust.
We'll do it then.
So I went down with her to put it into the trust and couldn't put it in the trust because it didn't say husband and wife on the deed. So this would be no different than you and I owning a house together, Carol. We could be related or not. Nobody knows. If it doesn't say husband and wife, so half of the house had to go through probate. So we were saying to Greg, why do you think the attorney said that? And Greg says, I'm
I
not
don't
sure.
know.
Dan and I said, money, greed.
Well, he was protecting his own, and I understand that.
Well, hearings to go through.
Is that like the mechanic who, you go there, have the work done, and then in the next day something falls off, and you can't help but think, I know he sabotaged that. But
You just don't
chances
know.
are he didn't, but you can't help but think that.
You can't help but think it. Like right now, when I had my car serviced, and you know how the horn has 2 horns in it? Only one of the 2 horns is working now.
So you sound like a little old lady horn.
Now I just have the little boop boop rather than the 340-1590, 340-1590. So back again, the concept of the group, very simply, we had nobody call us today to pick on us or anything, Dan. I guess we didn't upset anybody.
We did a good job.
I think, didn't we upset somebody last week? I called it.
Well,
That does happen.
occasionally.
On occasion, that can happen. Real quick. How much time we have left, Carol? 4 minutes? 3 minutes? 4? Which finger are we using? The 4?
The 4-minute finger.
I want to real quick explain the difference between a mutual fund and an exchange-traded fund. Real quick. Mutual fund. Figure this. They call it mutual because you are mutually a owner of all of the stocks in that fund, mutually with a whole bunch of people. What happens is this. This is one of the big problems with it. You buy this mutual fund in November. You put $100,000 in. January, it's worth $90,000, and you get a statement in the mail that says you owe taxes. You say, wait a minute. I lost $10,000. How can I owe any money? Because you are a mutual owner of all of the stocks that are in that group from the day they bought them. So maybe the company bought some of these stocks 20 years ago and they sold them in December,
Made a profit.
made a profit, even though your account went down because you've only been on a month, you mutually own profits and losses with everybody. Isn't that exciting? So that's one of the fallacies of a mutual fund. So now they developed a new kind of fund called an exchange-traded fund a few years ago, which is really, to me, I can't imagine why I would go into a mutual fund. An exchange-traded fund, same concept, a whole bunch of stocks are owned by this group, but my account stands on its own. And because it's exchange traded, I can buy it at 10 o'clock this morning and I can sell it at 10:30, and I have nothing to do with the rest of the people that are in that fund. Mine stands on its own.
Are you saying that I can't sell my mutual fund and have the trade executed when I make the phone call?
Well, that isn't what I said, but that is the truth. Dan set me up for that because
Yes,
he
I
knows
am.
that. What happens is a mutual fund only trades at the close of business every day. So you call your broker at 10 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, I want to buy or sell. He said, no problem. You can't buy or sell until 4 o'clock this afternoon based on the closing price of that.
So if it's dropping and you know it's dropping and you desperately call and say, sell, 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 it could still be going down a lot more from the time you place the order till the time it's executed.
Or vice versa. If you say buy because it's a good deal at 10 in the morning and it might have gone up
To
10%,
20.
all of a sudden it's not a good deal
And
anymore.
that's not the case with the other type. of
With the
investment.
exchange-traded fund, it is done instantly based on what it is at that moment, whether you buy or sell.
And that's a big, big difference.
Monster difference. So when I talk to young people especially, I almost never want to talk about mutual funds. I want to talk about exchange-traded funds. Another thing that happens, this is purely self-serving, mutual funds, you oftentimes pay a bigger commission to the agent. Exchange trade, and you don't see that. The exchange traded funds, I have to add a commission to it, so you see it exactly what's going on. Next, very often the exchange traded funds, the fund managers, don't charge as much money. So little tiny things are all in the consumer's benefit. So I just wanted to bring that up today because it isn't
Well, we
something.
had a lot of fun today, but you need to come back to this topic next week.
Next week?
It's important.
Okay, we'll talk about it next week because Greg said goodbye. Greg, did we say goodbye? You said goodbye.
Yippers.
Until next week, thank you, bye.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.
This is WPSL, Port St. Lucie.